Hello, and welcome to episode 5 of Let Them Eat Cake. This episode we'll be talking to one of the revolution leaders from Lebanon, the 154th most corrupt country out of 180 counted. Lebanon has plunged from 28 on the Corruption Perception Index to 24 in 3 short years. Lebanon ranks around countries like Iran, Iraq, and Eritrea. The country has been ravaged by hyperinflation, and the Lebanese people that can't leave are suffering. This episode will explore Lebanon from the perspective of someone who is from and lives in the country, just like our other episodes. We have worked closely with our guest, and we will continue to work closely with her in hopes of aiding the Lebanese people in their struggles. As always, we are 5th Gen, an information warfare cooperative that aims to shed light on things those in power want to be kept in the dark. We want to give a voice to the voiceless and give people the information they need to thrive in a world that tries so hard to starve you of it. I am Jack, and my co-host is John, and we hope you enjoy the show.
We have a weapon more powerful than their British Empire, and that weapon is our refusal to bow to any order but our own, any institution but our own.
I'm Mariam Kisirwan. I've been an activist, kind of a political activist since 2015 when I was a board member in the Youth Think movement. And then in 2019, I created the page called Lebanon Uprising, mainly active on Instagram. I stayed dedicated for almost 2 years during the Lebanese revolution.
When it comes to the revolution in Lebanon, how similar would you say your movement is to something like the Arab Spring?
Well, I think that one of the things that happened in the Lebanese revolution but didn't happen in the Arab Spring is actually that it was hard to create that illusion of winning until the elections. So what I mean is, during the Arab Spring, we all noticed that the leadership that followed wasn't actually a leadership that was accepted later on by the people. And the people felt the disappointment after all the elections took place. However, in Lebanon, unfortunately, it's because of a huge disappointment and of long years of illusion and of lies, of being far from reality, especially in terms of the media that they were exposed to and they were watching, and the amount of conspiracies from different persons and different leaders, especially that what makes Lebanon different, and maybe it's the weak point of Lebanon, and at the same time a strong point in a way, that there's no one big head like in many other Arab countries. So we are talking about many heads. That's why no one can have an agenda and execute it easily. But this is also exactly why it was hard for us to take down the leadership, because you should be attacking or not attacking. Yes, it was attacking.
Not physically attacking.
Yeah, not physically attacking, but I always believe in being offensive when it comes to Lebanon, especially after the past 2 years. So when I use these terminologies, it's the least we can do. So I'm not sorry.
What I want to elaborate on is the history of revolutionary violence in Lebanon and how your movement is such a breakaway from the past mistakes those movements made. And the fact that there is a state, but then there's also a militia, right? So in most countries, like in Africa, for example, a lot of countries, the militia will overthrow the state. That classical coup type thing. But in Lebanon, since both forces are already in power, the militia and the state, there would be no possible way for an armed revolutionary force to rise up and challenge those powers. It could only be done through a non-violent resistance.
Yeah, and not only protest, actually. What we did, and that's why I tell you, yes, when I say attack, we were attacking, but our attack was not violent, but it doesn't mean it didn't have any effect. So one of the things that we created, for example, a phenomenon called a politicians booing. So when we started to follow them and to actually limit their freedom in displacement and to actually create a certain social threat, although we never hit anyone or we never attacked anyone with violence. But it was one of the things that we, as unarmed people, and if we're unarmed, it doesn't mean we were weak. We were so powerful, and we had a creative mind to peacefully actually bother them, to go to their ministries, to go to their houses. One time there was a van and a sound system that was saying things under their houses. One of the prime ministers that came during the past 2 years mentioned, when he was assigned as prime minister, we have to save the country because us as politicians, we can't go to restaurants anymore. We want to go to restaurants. If someone's freedom is touched, no matter who and no matter how, it is something that bothers. So I agree that in Lebanon, we were so peaceful, and maybe in other revolution they weren't. But I guess the main reason is that all our parents, especially the generation of our parents, convinces us that shedding blood is useless. Why? Because they shed blood and it was useless. Why it was useless? Because they were shedding blood against each other, because it was a civil war. It was people against people.
So, do you consider the social pressures, the booing? Would you consider that pretty effective? Like, the politicians, they felt pressured.
It worked depending on your goal. So if the goal was bothering, just for the sake of bothering, and it's not a plan with goals, it's not about taking them down. No, it didn't work for that. Okay, but the plan was that they shouldn't be resting during all their criminal practices over the people. But maybe if these things, all the actions were heading or leading to certain goals, preset goals that are put beforehand, and there was a clear path for these, using these as a tool for the path, but in a structured plan and strategy, maybe the results would have been better. Maybe we would have been more democratic in the past elections, or it wouldn't have happened.
So, what was the ultimate goal? Was it just disruption, or was it like what was the end goal from all this?
There is no end goal, because none of us, including me, have set. This is what I'm saying. No one was setting a plan and a clear targets and a path. So we were doing things and we were reactive in doing things, and this is something we should admit. We were doing things based on emotions, and it was not based on a plan. We were random, and in a way there are many people in this revolution that were promoting this. We don't want to be organized. We were born random and we will stay random because our power is in randomness, and I don't know what, these slogans that are totally useless.
I'd say both is good, and I think that a good example of this would be a group like Anonymous, right? Like when they do cyber activism, anyone can join in, but they normally have a connection with each other where they can do some sort of targeted campaign. So anyone can do their own thing, but they can still come together on things. Like the Church of Scientology stuff they did. They really did some damage to that cult.
Yeah, because they are already agreeing on a mission. And this is the key. But what used to happen with us is that we didn't have a clear mission. Sometimes we want to decide to be divisive, and sometimes we want to agree on the common ground. Okay, and at the end of the day, Honestly, I'm gonna say it as it is. We were very few real people in this revolution, and we were infiltrated, and we were not infiltrated only by one side or by one institution. It's not only the intelligence unit, it's not only the parties. There are people that are infiltrating us for their own benefit, because they were powerful and they want to save their power, and the good people, they weren't capable of keeping up. Let's take me as an example. Why I was able to join this revolution? Because I stopped my career for 2 years and I kept a small hand that was a small hand that let me keep up. But most of the people have duties, have responsibilities, and they have loans and they have families, and things were actually hitting them so hard. It's not easy for someone to just join 2 years of revolution.
Well, this is actually the goal of our company that we're trying to start. Because all these states, they have people professionally doing information warfare. And the people, they have jobs, so they have to do it in their free time. So one of the things that we specifically want to be able to do is help fund these people. So basically, they don't have to depend so much on having a job, so they can actually dedicate their time to doing these types of actions.
I'm glad you opened this subject, because this is exactly what I was going to talk about now also, that we were not only infiltrated by these agendas, whether personal, political, or whatever it is, or the state's agenda, but we were also, because I consider this as infiltration, the opportunistic people that are not real with the mission and they just want something out of it for their own personal interest and not the public interest. Among these people, and unfortunately, today, for example, I shared a post for a page called Lebanon Times. He posted on August 4 that August 4 is the birth of the NGOs that stole people money. And they have the audacity to actually post about August 4 because they call themselves the revolution. People that were close to us and we was used to consider as fellows. So when we now expose these things, we weren't part of it at some point, no, but we were depending on these people. Okay, so I choose to actually organize the street, organize in the groups, organize structures to actually bring people together and to actually write the chants. There are people that they wanted to fundraise, right? Everyone should take a responsibility. It's just that I don't like to. I'm the type of people that used to not like. Maybe it was one of the mistakes that if you don't like to tell people I want money because of even if it's not that direct and it's about a page and a social media work. So it doesn't mean that I should leave the wrong people on the gate of money generated for this revolution or the August 4 victims. So we started to ask about transparency. The same thing happened, the same procedure, the same strategy that the corrupt politicians follow in doing a political party and an NGO at the same time, and this conflict of interest because of a flaw in law of associations and organizations in Lebanon, because it's outdated since the Ottoman Empire. So they are making use out of this. The politicians were doing conflicts inside of Lebanon, and at the same time they have the political parties that are funded by some countries, each by a country that is interested, through their religious NGOs. Okay, but today the titles were a bit different. It's not religious. It's called revolutionary, change makers. They have, at the same time, they are the same board members in a party, and they are, each one of them opened an NGO, the same thing, a humanitarian, not religious, but the same process and the same conflict of interest in a non-transparent at all way. And when someone like me asked about transparency, although they have it, and one of the NGOs is for mental health, they accused me of being mentally deranged with a low IQ, and then they accused me of being a traitor. They did everything they can to make me lose my credibility, and they didn't raise transparency until everything was exposed in January.
So I just want to give two examples to normalize for some Westerners what she's talking about. So two historical examples that you'd probably be very familiar with. Groups like Al-qeada, they grew out of a charity organization, for example. They used charity to gain their power. Another example with Afghanistan is the madrasas. People think that the Taliban were created by the CIA funding, but they weren't. So the refugees going into Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, used charities to basically open all these madrasas, which is like an Islamic school. And that's what installed the Taliban ideology. They were literally created through a charity organization to fund schools and things like that. So those are just examples to show how NGOs have fucked up the world.
This is how I started doubting their intentions. I started asking, why aren't they funding at least not a salary? We weren't even asking for a salary. At least the transportation of those when things got so hard and the fuel shortage and everything. At some point, the dollar was equivalent to 1,500 Lebanese pounds. It became, when it started to become 8,000, we started to lose people. Why weren't we providing buses? You are getting a lot of money for this revolution. What are you doing? Why aren't you providing people with kits so we can be strong in the ground, so we can resist more in the ground? And there was a lot of money, by the way. What I'm talking about is hundreds of millions of dollars, not millions of dollars, hundreds. It's estimated 300 million.
So the economic crisis in 2019, I have this little thing right here. What I've been told is it was largely investors pulling out of the country, but I'm sure there's other reasons than that. But just some of the cost of goods immediately in 2019 that went up. Cooking oil went up by 37%. Rice went up by 19, not 37%, 37 times. That's how high the inflation was for cooking oil alone.
Yeah, it's 3,700%.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And then this one right here is just, it's even worse now, but this is just 2019 to 2021. 10,000 Lebanese pounds would get you in groceries. 2019, you can basically get a full thing, chicken, vegetables, milk, whatever. 2021, the same amount of money would only get you a few oranges and apples.
This inflation is not normal, and you know what's scary today about the country? It's not only the inflation and it's not the dollar rate. It's actually the absence of goods. It's actually the absence of the kids' milk. It's actually the absence of the contraceptives. It's the absence of the cancer medicines. Why are these absent even if we want to pay for them? Why can't we renew our passports? Sorry, this is the most... Do you know that this is considered as taking the people as hostages when you don't renew their legal papers? In Lebanon, we are waiting. Let me tell you this funny story. What is happening with passports in Lebanon? In Lebanon today, you take an appointment on a platform that the General Security has launched, okay? And then for you to renew your passport. For example, most of the people are in next June, okay? So they are going to stay for a year. They can't travel, okay? And the funny part is not here yet. The funny part is that you have to have an excuse. Among the excuses that I remember, okay, and you can't if you don't have one of these irrational excuses, is that you should be having a visa appointment, okay? This is number one. Number two, that you should be having a work contract. So if I was recruited today and I got a contract today, okay, I can't travel to that country because I have to renew my contract after 5 months. And then I will be sending them that contract of 4 months ago. Would you believe me that I will still go to that work that I'm bringing you an offer dated 4 months ago?
Yeah.
Do you know, I saw a couple of days ago a review about a restaurant, a very good restaurant. I love it. It's called the Zat Rosette. Now, in Zat Rosette, for example, I order a meal for, let's say, 150,000. Okay. So she was saying that the food is good and I don't know what, but one lahm rajin, which means it's meat with it's like meat with bread, okay, for 11,000. So it's a bit expensive. This was in 2015. 11,000. Today, 150,000.
So you mentioned personal reasons that people are infiltrating. How would you diffuse this sort of personal selfishness from people? How did the protest movement deal with it?
Honestly, the solution is by normalizing questioning, and by, first of all, by normalizing asking each other when we begin who is who, and hold ourselves responsible to actually tell anything that would feel like suspicious. Because at some point there was some people that they tell you, well, no, I didn't tell who I am because no one asked. No, when we are in a revolution against certain people, and you are not only trying to be with us, you are trying to lead us and to oppose us and to obstruct our movements and to give your opinion above our opinion, we have to know that you are linked. Because maybe when we are democratic and we are voting upon these things, this will play a negative role in voting for your own choice. So we want to keep democracy, and everyone is allowed to be with us, but there's a level of transparency that each one of us is entitled to say. For example, I'm going to give an example about myself. When I was 15 years old, I used to support in a good way, okay? I used to support, really support a certain party I'm really against now. And in the elections at AU in my university, I used to help another party that I am totally against them now, and they are my number one opponents. And I used to help them for 3 years in a row to win their elections. I said these things in 2015, I said them about my history. And today I said them, although these are minimal issues compared to what I'm talking about. I don't have any business partnerships. I don't have any blood ties. I don't have any previous experience or any relation or any conversation with anyone that we're against now. I was once a follower, and once I helped out in students' elections. So I'm transparent because we are all entitled to doubt each other. This thing will lead to trust at some point between certain people, not all the people. We were not supposed to be imposed on each other, but we were, just because we are few.
Would you say that you were thrust into the movement, or would you say that you sort of fell into it?
In my case, it's a bit. There are many elements because, for example, I told you that I was active in 2015. My reaction was, we were all getting suffocated from 2018, from 2016, 17, 18, year after year, and we weren't knowing that we are all suffocating. Each one used to think that he is suffocating on a personal level and that he is the one who is not doing okay. What happened, my reaction literally was that when the WhatsApp things came out and I saw in the news that there's a road closed, I wore my shoe, the first thing that I saw in front of the door, and I told my mom, this is the spark that ignites revolutions. And I saw that this is a spark, and I saw a revolution coming because of the spark that we lived in 2015 that was the trash, unfortunately. So I knew that there's something coming, and I knew that I have to. I used to think in 2015 when everything ended and there was a big disappointment. I don't want to get involved in these things anymore. In that moment, I felt that yes, I want to resume, and I want to actually exercise everything that I've done before in a better way, and to learn from the lessons that I learned in the previous experience, because I didn't want that experience to go to waste. It's something good that I have it, but to be honest, I could use it on a personal level, but I couldn't help anyone, whether to avoid prevent them from doing the same mistakes. Apparently, a human behavior, a human nature is that everyone should learn their own lessons from their own personal experiences, and especially when there are people that have agendas, this thing will be will double the layer.
Before I give it to Jack here, I have two other graphics. I found this really great poll. It's the angriest countries in the world. So, in 2018, before the economic crisis in Lebanon, the angriest country in the world is Armenia with 45%, and then Iraq 44, Iran 43. In the most recent one, done 2021 to 2022, the angriest country in the world is now Lebanon, with 49% of people polled saying they are angry, followed by Turkey at 48%, and then Armenia at 46%, which was the previous number one.
Because, yeah, I agree. I think everyone now watching this podcast have noticed from my own tonality that there is anger. And even if I want to try to moderate that, I can't. And anyone who is living in Lebanon cannot. And I think, honestly, in these circumstances, for someone to be calm and normal, it is abnormal, honestly. For someone to be at ease and in peace and accepting and embracing everything, this can't be normal, because there is so much inhumanity. And watching inhumanity with calm and ease, this is not something that someone who is so human could do. You know what I say, for example, I'm always angry and I'm always worried about the country. And then I do see I was always sacrificing something to stay in the revolution. I wasn't in need, so that's why I didn't find a solution. So I went to the street. It was never that way. Contrarily, when I first went into the streets, I went viral by the followers of a certain party, she's going to the street to protest against hunger with an iPhone 11 Pro back in 2019. I went viral every year during that day. I go viral again. It is not. It wasn't initiated against hunger, and the people that went to the streets, they weren't hungry people. They were people seeking dignity and seeking respect, the minimum of life standards that they deserve as people that who worked hard on developing themselves and on reaching a certain level that they don't agree and they don't accept to go below that level for someone else's mistake. Whoever this person is, no one would accept. I can't believe that we accepted in a way that our money to be seized. A central bank seizing people's money. Who would expect that? Who would expect putting money in banks and get robbed?
It's actually happening in China at the moment.
And in Sri Lanka, I heard.
Yes. So it's very interesting that
started there. Yeah, because if you accept it in one country, it will happen in other countries.
Exactly.
I think we all noticed the trends. I used to think it's only in Lebanon with these Lebanese networks of businessmen and women related to politicians, that when there's a trend, no matter if it harms the country, it doesn't, whatever it is, the trend, everyone does the trend, everyone adopts the trend. And this we saw in COVID with countries. It's a trend. And
so you mentioned foreign influence earlier. Could you expand on that a little bit and talk about which countries are involved, which parties, who's interested in Lebanon?
There was things that were obvious to everyone, and there was things that were under the table. So we can't know the whole truth about these things, especially in the new statistical, because things change in the past 2 years, 3 years. You mean when I talked about the religious NGOs and that there was foreign influence through these NGOs, through political parties, right? For example, KSA used to support the Future movement, which used to represent the religion of Sunni. You have Iran, they support Hezbollah, they're representing the religion of Shia. These are their agendas that we don't agree with, just a reminder. And the Christians, they always, okay, so it's like not very direct, but some of them are funded by the US or whatever countries, the Western countries, or the French, some of them the French. But really, do you know why you can't limit these things in Lebanon? Because everyone of our political class, they are literally going to allow foreign influence in a way or another if it was monetized. So it is very normalized in the culture, in the political culture in the country.
Is one of the goals of the revolution to rid foreign influence from Lebanon? Like, is that one of the ultimate goals, or is that a sub goal, or is that what's the end goal with foreign influence?
This was not a unified vision upon this also, because there was people that were very strict in holding this mission and to actually push for it, to actually get rid of any foreign influence, and for us to take lead and to take control, because no one will know and no one will work for the interest of your country like you do, correct?
Yeah.
There was some people that, okay, they want to get rid of a certain political influence, but they don't want to get rid of all foreign influences. So,
Okay.
for example, you see them, they support France, they support the US, they support these countries that are, in a way, revolution friendly, you know?
Yeah.
Because the revolution, one of their agenda is to get rid of some of their enemies also.
So it turns out that the audio was picking up from my webcam microphone, and it hasn't been picking up on this microphone the whole time.
Excellent. I love how we always have audio issues.
But
if
you
it's
know,
not me,
but
it's
it's
you.
fine because since I'm editing it, I can just re-record my own audio in post.
You added them.
That's funny.
Yeah. So, I wanted to ask a more serious question to kind of switch topics a little bit, but we're going to come back to this because this is going to be our main focus. I wanted to ask you a very controversial question. Does slavery exist in Lebanon?
Does slavery exist?
Mm-hmm.
Do you mean, slavery does exist anyway with treating foreign workers. Yes, but there's another type of slavery too, which is actually there are people that are working just to cover the expense of their own job. So, and this is considered as slavery.
That is literally slavery. That's
Yeah.
one of the things that is a key principle to slavery, is to make sure they make it seem like you could buy your way out.
Yeah, and for example, now we talked about the taxis and Uber and Bolt and everything. But for example, these people, there are some people, especially in Bolt, they are suffering from the very little profit. And they are reporting that now that it has been 2 years, they are putting a high cost on the car's maintenance because they used it for 2 years and the cost is in dollars. So apparently it was a failing investment to actually work for 2 years and use your car in this application, for example. Okay? Because at the end of the day, you're changing your oil in dollars, you're fixing your car in dollars, and you wasted a lot of money on that after you used it. Okay, so this is one of the things that the drivers, not all the drivers will actually have a certain study and to actually know if this is going to be profitable. No one can do any study, let's agree, in Lebanon on anything and any project, because each day everything is changing. There's a risk 100%. But even in terms of a human resource, there are salaries that are very low, but the people don't know that this is a low salary because the dollar is in constant rise, the dollar rate, and the goods are also, their prices is increasing always. So let's say you were hired 6 months ago with a salary of 3 million lira, because there are salaries like that. 3 million liras, we're talking about $100. Okay, and today prices of goods increased, and also the dollar rate is different, and everything is changing. You will notice that you are going to work just to actually cover the expenses of going to work.
Okay, on that, is there an employment crisis? Are people refusing to work because there's
Yeah,
no point in it?
this is from the beginning of the revolution. Already there was people that they don't want to work. And when the dollar rate reached 10,000, this is in the middle of the revolution. This problem started that, yeah, there are people that they wouldn't work to cover these expenses of work only. But do you know the other people that are doing it? It's not that they are doing it to cover the expense. Maybe they are getting a very small amount out of it, but they cannot give up on that because the level they reached in poverty is that low. We are seeing a very low level, a very high level of poverty, and this issue is not tackled properly. There's the light shed on this is not enough.
What, if any, help has the international sort of UN community sort of stuff actually done anything to help Lebanon?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked this question, because the simple answer is to do a proper reference check and due diligence and investigate properly in all the beneficiaries that are benefiting from their grants and their programs and their anything. This also applies on the World Bank, because what we are discovering that these institutions are helping really corrupt people. They are not doing anything to investigate properly in these beneficiaries. So just like I said once to donors, that they have a responsibility to do a proper due diligence about the NGOs they're sending their money to, because it's not enough for you to send money. It's you should be sending money and making sure they're reaching to the proper beneficiary. This trick that everyone uses, that they come and they help and they make sure that they are helping the wrong person and the corrupt, and they tell you, I helped you with $1 million. No, you didn't help me. I didn't see it, so it's not considered. So please don't just pretend to help and you know that it's useless. For example, we've been seeing many people that they didn't finish their project, or they didn't deliver the outcome that they promised to deliver, and then they get again another fund. How are they doing that?
This is exactly what I wanted to get into right here, is what you're asking. Because when August 4th happened, we immediately learned that when we were supporting and giving aid, we couldn't go through any official channels.
Unfortunately, do you know what happened with me? I was talking a lot negatively about some NGOs, and many people tried to help through me, and I refused that because I'm not nor an official. The problem was that when I started to expose the corrupt NGOs, people started asking me, give us the names of the good NGOs, because we want to donate to good NGOs. I couldn't find, because the problem is that the NGOs that are good NGOs, they are not known. So I don't know them. They didn't take enough exposure. They didn't present themselves properly, maybe, I don't know. And what I'm sure of also, even the good NGOs and the bad NGOs, of course, but the good ones also, no one has a proof that they are good. When you're good, I want to see something that is extraordinary as a donor. I want to see a financial statement.
I think it's probably because what they're doing out of actual charity. So maybe they're not looking for the recognition, but that is maybe the issue.
There are very few. I know that for a fact.
I mean,
I don't want to say
corruption.
it. For me to vet, it's not that I should listen to you or you should listen to me. I should see something. And this is what I said. And I presented many models. I said, first of all, we have to know the standards of procurement, the criteria of choosing the beneficiaries. And I want to see an updated and monthly updated transparency report. So no one wants to do this. No one wants to put numbers out there and to be responsible of these numbers that they're putting. And they know that it is a responsibility because we're following these numbers. So when you're not putting numbers, but you are known to be good, it's a problem. It's a problem. Equals to corruption because you are not giving me the safety to donate.
Since we're in the wrap-up period, if there's anything that you wanted to get into that we haven't covered, I'm just going to give you the floor to bring up any topic if you've had something that's been on your mind that you wanted to bring up today.
To be honest, I didn't expect that we will be talking in these topics specifically. This is the first time that I talk about these topics, and I'm not even talking about these things on my own page. I'm not doing any statements or anything. So it was very good that we tackled these issues because what I believe in that these are the things that we need to change to create our own rules and for logical reasons and for a good purpose and to actually follow them as people. Because what we lack in Lebanon is not rules and existence. What we lack is to practice what we preach, to be disciplined and to actually follow an ethical combination of some rules and regulations that would create a good system for us to work with instead of this system that was fully based on wasta and not on skills and not on transparency and with briberies. These are the things that we should be wanting to abide by, to actually be engaged, to create our own system. There is a system that is totally rotten, so it needs a radical change. And these are the things that matter. These are the things, whenever we want to be in a revolution, we have the right to be transparent about who is who. Whenever we are in a revolution, skills matter. This is something we didn't talk about, for example. There was so much ego, okay? There was so much ego in this revolution and everywhere, I think, in the world, that no one wants to appreciate neither the seniority, neither the previous experience, neither the skill of the other person. Everyone wants to give an opinion about everything. No, we don't know about all the things. Not all the fields are our fields, and a leader knows his strength and his weaknesses. And there are plenty of slogans that were created in this revolution that were slogans of infiltrators. This is something I figured out after 2 years. There are two. One of them I mentioned before, and there are two additional. The first one that I mentioned is about randomness. We are random and we want to stay random. Our strength is randomness. And the second thing was that no, we don't need leadership. Leadership will kill us. Leadership will harm us. How come? What? We kept learning about leadership and in our careers and in our universities and in our lives and in everything. And we are replacing a leadership. So how come a replacement, an alternative for leadership wouldn't be another leadership? This is something we abide by for 2 years. And the third thing is that the language of accusation is the language of the authority. This is double standards.
That one is a huge red flag for me.
Yeah, so التخوين لغة السلطة. It's double standard. Because if you are saying that I am the government because I'm accusing someone of being the government. You are using that language that
Yeah,
I'm
whoever
using
spelt it dealt it.
yeah, which makes you also a government. So how you say I'm sulta means authority, means I'm a traitor in this revolution. How if I accuse someone to not be ethical, I become an infiltrator because I used this language? No, we should be selective in this revolution.
Yeah,
And
and there's a
but
difference between leadership and hierarchy. It's
exactly.
like I always use the example of unions. Like you elect a union representative for a reason. He's not he doesn't actually run anything. He still answers to the union, but he has a leadership position because he's supposed to negotiate with things.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's not necessarily that leadership is in the CEO. Sometimes there's a board holding this
Yeah,
leadership.
a Shura council. That's how we like to run it.
Exactly.
What does being Lebanese mean to you, and how has that affected your actions in the last couple of years?
Being Lebanese is a super powerful human resource in terms of a resource that is never appreciated for his skills. As people in general, it's said about them, they are the happiest depressed people. And it's still true.
I've heard somebody say that before.
But it's true. It's so true. And it hit me so hard when the revolution started, October 17, 2019, because it was true since back then. And it was true from the years before. We used to party hard because partying is a healer for us. It's our therapy.